We'll start with a bit of Fintan and Hand. We'll start with a little bit of laughter. Welcome back to episode 4.
Come on, Sprag.
I didn't know. We've lasted so long compared to our usual projects that being this far in, I've already lost track.
I'm not going to lie. I loved doing the podcast. First 3 episodes. I thought it was great. Aston Villa were winning all their games. I was looking forward to coming on here every week. I was like, this is amazing. I get to go make Sprag's life a bit miserable. I get to just sit there smiling like a Cheshire cat. I get to have a great time. And now we've come crashing back down to earth. Sprag's like, oh, we got to keep doing the podcast this week. And I'm kind of like, nah.
Yeah, look at you now, huh? Look at you now. With
Imagine we did a podcast last year.
Oh, mate, there's just no point. There's just no point. I'm already like, you know, I think I'm worse for it than you. In that, because I think you're just more conditioned to like Villa not doing well, so you kind of take it. You take
United
it well.
Doing well, so this is way worse for you, right?
Yeah. So like when United don't win like 4 Premier Leagues in a row, I'm just like, what are we doing? Like I'm immediately mad. We may as well jump straight into it this week, haven't we? Got anything you want us to add? Like, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the pod. Only Fools and Scorers. Hope you're having a good time. Anything else?
Seems like you've taken care of it all, mate. I have to say, you're bringing a higher energy this week. And considering before we got onto the podcast, you were sitting there moaning about the fact that you'd had a shower and there was no warm water. I'm very pleasantly surprised about the Benjamin Spragg that we are being greeted by this week.
I had a fully cold shower this morning, so perhaps it's woken me up a little bit, Fintan. Perhaps it's put some pep in my step. I'll tell you what, though. Let's get a grumble out of the way, football aside, because nothing reasonable happened in the Premier League this week. So we got to fill some air. I got up this morning, jumped in the shower not long ago, as you could probably see for those of us watching on YouTube. Freezing cold, absolutely freezing cold. No hot water at all. Yesterday I got back to the house, no electricity, no electricity. So I'm thinking, oh, maybe there's a trip switch gone, you know, on the board, on the breaker board. So I went on, looked at that, it was all fine. And I thought maybe there's like a local power outage, like a power cut or whatever. So I peered around the neighbours over the balcony.
Lots of lights on.
Lights are on. I'm thinking, oh, that's odd. So I'm renting here whilst I'm in Dublin for a couple of months. And I text the guy I'm renting from. It turns out he's on a meter and it's run out of bloody money, isn't it?
Really?
So he had to load up more money onto the thing. He goes, go and check the balance. I'm pressing all these buttons. It comes up £0, £0. They cut me off.
€0, 0 cents. Thank you very much.
€0, 0
It's because you're British, okay? If you were Irish, he never would have allowed that to happen. I'm just going to be honest.
So yeah,
that's the way we win our little battles.
He topped me back up and he put 50 quid in there. But no, because I was like
50 quid.
Well, that's it. Because I was like annoyed that the electricity cut. I've been leaving everything on. I've got the PC on full. I got dishwasher and washing machine working full cycles. I've drained that 50 quid if he's going to be tight about it.
Do you have a shower that is done by an immersion? Like, do you have to turn on the hot water, or is this just electric shower that did not have hot water this morning?
The hot water's usually on. It comes on a timer, I guess, or something.
Okay.
There's usually something in the hot water in the tank.
You've got on 24 hours a day from this point on, I assume.
But no, I haven't had it on. I think it's usually just there, and we run out of hot water if you have too many hot water usages. You can boost it. I don't know what's going on with it, mate. But this morning there's no hot water. Should we talk football? So much for that diversion.
Let's get into the football. Aston Villa versus Leeds United is the first game we're going to talk about this week. What were the predictions?
That's right. We did. So we did predictions last week, folks, and we'll
no graphic, but we'll have Benjamin Spragg recall them.
Yeah. So the first predictions: Aston Villa Leeds. I predicted 2-1 to Villa. You predicted 2-0 to Villa. So the boys, we were very much in a Villa win camp. But I didn't. What happened in this game, Fintan? What was the score? I can't remember.
Aston Villa lost 3-0 to Leeds. Patrick Bamford. Patrick Bamford scored a hat-trick. It meant that Villa's unbeaten run of 8 games came to an end. We, of course, won every game this season. We were...
Sorry, can I just say, the way Villa fans and the way people in general are talking about this is like, Villa's unbeaten run comes to an end. Oh, we'd won every... You're 4 games in. How
many games have United won this season?
Doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, when you talk about unbeaten runs coming to the end, I want to hear about Liverpool last season. That was like they were close to the Invincibles run of Arsenal.
Have you won only one Premier League game this season?
We beat Brighton and we beat Newcastle.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. You got a penalty after the final whistle to beat Brighton. So, with the real rules of the game, you've won one game of football this year.
The points are the points, my friend. Let's talk Patrick Bamford, shall we? So you're unbeaten run of
So
actually an unbeaten run of 8 games.
We had an unbeaten run of 8 games, yes. Stretching back to last season when we managed to miraculously escape the drop, and of course it was going very well. It was a great time to be a Villa fan. We were getting super excited. Patrick Bamford, in episode 1 of our podcast, I suggested he was a striker who would never make the step up from championship level to Premier League level. So I went up and I looked up a little bit of stats bench.
Oh, this is so sad. This is so tragically sad.
I'm going to die on this hill.
Fintan.
Right? Patrick Bamford is not a striker who is going to do well in the Premiership in the long run. He didn't score any goals at Crystal Palace. I'm pretty sure he didn't score any goals. Was that Middlesbrough? No, he scored a few goals at Middlesbrough that got him his move to Leeds. But this is the stat. So far this year, 6 goals in 6 games.
Which is an amazing record.
That's not bad.
Great. That's a fantastic record.
That is a very good record. He has a 30% shot conversion. That is not sustainable for anyone. It's certainly not Mr. fucking Paddy Bamford. It's just not happening. But last season, he had 16 goals in 45 games, which is not terrible, right? That's a reasonable record. Almost a goal every 3 games. If he's adding other parts to the game, then I would say fair play. But he missed 33 big chances. He had a 14% total shot conversion. And even against Villa, he had a few chances before he scored. And in tighter games, that could be crucial. Leeds went out and spent £30 million on Rodrigo from Valencia. And there's no way they would have signed him if they thought that Bamford was going to be their main striker. But now Bielsa is just sticking him out every week. And I bet he's at home with the misses. And he's just like, God, there's no way Paddy's going to keep scoring this week. I'll get to drop him next week. Bang. Scores a goal. Bangs in a hat-trick. But there's no way. I reckon if they stuck you up front in that Leeds team with how fluid they are and how quick they counter, that you'd bang in at least 9 goals. Now, they would mostly be just smashing off your head at the back post. But I still reckon that you would score a few goals in this Leeds team.
So
that's my Patrick Bamford rant.
That's your Patrick Bamford rant. I actually tried to clip it out because episode 1, and obviously I always give the one time Fintan and I have made football content was before was a show we did for the World Cup back in it was 2018.
World Cup 2018. I don't know.
Russia 2018.
Bottled it when Kane didn't.
When England got to the semi-final, and were robbed. And Fintan predicted Egypt to win the World Cup. It's sort of he still claims as a joke.
In jest.
But it's just funny to me that the very first episode was Fintan saying that Patrick Bamford's a championship striker. You know, he won't cut it in the Premier League. And I tried to clip that out and do the Curb Your Enthusiasm meme and then it was just like Patrick Bamford's hat-trick against Villa. But very funny that the first player that we sort of critiqued on the show, I suppose, has come back to haunt you this week. I would agree, though, that this feels like just like a purple patch in form and sort of overachieving. I mean,
remember last year? Remember the Pookie party? Yeah. Finland went absolutely insane. He became a national hero. They had songs about him. Every club in Finland was singing about him. He scored a few goals. He fell off. But obviously this Leeds side is a lot more competent and going to do a lot better than that Norwich side. The game in itself...
Sorry, can I just interject that? You talk about Pookie from last season. Do you know why he was signed?
I don't know why he was signed for Norwich, no.
Because Norwich have this insane stats guy who apparently someone correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a story that I've heard in a couple of different places, was that they looked at the type of chances in the Championship that Norwich created.
Really?
You know, be it like balls in behind, crosses, whatever, like passing around the box.
And they looked up who's getting
and then they looked up who's getting the best return on those chances, and it was Pookie, who at the time was like unknown.
Not getting a game for Celtic, I think.
Yeah, just like...
Or maybe he'd gone back to Copenhagen or something.
Whatever.
He was somewhere else. I probably got it completely wrong with what the order
and they basically ran Sims, I guess, and it came out that this Pookie guy was like, this is the perfect guy for the job. And then signed him off the back of this research that he had the best conversion rate of the type of chances that it created. And of course, then when they went into the Premier League, he just started scoring for fun, like the first few weeks. And everyone was like, "Oh my god!" Like they've like solved football.
Fantasy football.
Exactly. Yes.
Who didn't have him were absolutely heartbroken. I think that's becoming more and more commonplace in the Premier League and in other big clubs where there's a lot of, I think, except for Manchester United, given how they recruit.
Manchester United has a dartboard with like European players who were like quite prominent 4, 5, 6 years ago, and then Ed Woodward just sort of blindly throws the darts, and then we decide a day before the deadline closes who we want to overpay 10x to try and sign. But yeah, no, it's just interesting with the Bamford thing. I would agree that this is probably just
yeah, of course, it does seem that way.
But we'll put him on
in the game itself. Like I was saying,
the rest of the season.
Should we have a Bamford watch?
Just
so we have
keep
did Danny Ings score? Is Patrick Bamford a fraud? We've got 2 segments in the podcast now. We're making some steady progress.
But we should extend it to is Patrick Bamford a fraud? So if he stops scoring goals, fraud, and then if he gets embroiled in some sort of credit card cloning scam as well, like that also counts.
We covered both.
We're covering all angles with this segment. You go.
But anyway, to talk about the Aston Villa versus Leeds game, I think Leeds definitely deserve to win. There's no doubt about it. Can't argue it. But it was a much closer affair than 3-0. Once it went 70 minutes and they scored their first goal, we kind of collapsed, which was a little bit unfortunate given how solid we've looked so far this season. But Leeds, honestly, even though it was close, the way they play football is scary almost. They come out with such ferocity and they attack so much. And when they go forward, they're just like complete gung-ho. You remember when you'd play Championship Manager back in the day and you'd throw on gung-ho and you'd lose like 5 or 6-0 because your boys are every single person's up in the final third of the opposition. That is what Bielsa does, but he somehow does it in a way where they're organized enough to get back.
Yeah.
It is fantastic to watch. I really do like watching Leeds. And I know if some people are listening that are Villa fans, there's this fake rivalry like that was just generated a couple of years ago when we were both pushing towards the top of the season. Good old Paddy Bamford had a little dive when he didn't get touched. I'm pretty sure he ended up getting a 3-game ban. And we went up probably when Leeds were the best team in the championship. We went up through the playoffs and they didn't. So there's this rivalry, but I don't feel it. So Jack Grealish has a couple of chances. We don't score. Bamford gets us and they run away with it. The questions I want to ask, because you probably haven't seen a huge amount of both of these teams, right?
I've watched a decent chunk of Villa. I've probably not watched as much Leeds, which doesn't make sense, obviously, because they're, like you say, they're probably one of the more exciting teams to watch. So yeah,
you watched a bit. You watched the highlights before the podcast and whatnot. But do you think that Leeds? I've been banging on from week 1 that they could be the best promoted side of all time. Do you think with the way the league is going, they could cause a massive upset and like go top 6, top 4? Or do you think something around the top half of the table is their ceiling? And if you've watched Villa, what do you think the reality is for Villa now? We've had our first loss. I'm throwing 2 questions at you, but you got this.
Yeah, thank you. I think the reality for both sides is probably quite similar in that as good a start as you've both had, and as promising football as you've both played, I do think that you probably each have enough frailty that you won't be challenging, or you won't be in that top 4, top 6. Certainly not top 4. I'd imagine not top 6. In terms of Leeds, certainly in some of the earlier games, I think actually are they on back-to-back clean sheets now? Did they keep a? They certainly weren't involved in.
They lost the game. They lost the game before 1-0.
It was 1-0, wasn't it?
Sucker punch against Wolves.
Right. Yeah,
but they were quite good again, and then Jimenez scored a goal.
Sure. But their defense isn't as leaky as it perhaps was in some of the first 2-3 fixtures. But I do think that they're probably a little bit too exposed in that sense to make a serious like top 4, top 6.
It's exciting though.
It's very, very exciting.
I don't think. I'll joking aside.
Yeah, and I think the same with Villa in that like you've probably, of course, sort of overperformed. I mean, you beat Liverpool 48-0 or whatever it was, or 48-10. So I think there's some overperformance from both sides. Both sides clearly way, way, way too good to get pulled into any bottom of the table, bottom half of the table stuff.
And you would like
yeah,
to think so.
I think
my PTSD as a Villa fan, though, we've 12 points and I'm looking down the bottom of the table. I'm like, few teams only have 1 point so far. That's a lot of points to catch up.
I think that's not even a conversation for Villa or Leeds this season. I think like 8th to 12th is where both teams will end up. Here's the thing, like
with that for what it's worth.
I think you should be delighted with that. I think the danger is that Villa fans, 4 or 5 games in, and now they're getting carried away, and then like you end up coming 11th, and they're like, oh well, but that's not the season for that. That that's a couple seasons down the line, you would hope, and I think probably true for Leeds as well, who, given given how both clubs are being run at the moment, seemingly very well, and moving in the right direction, top 8 challenges within a few seasons are realistic. I think this season consolidation and probably both have a little bit too many frailties in certain places that European chase isn't really on.
I'm excited to see Leeds play against one of the weaker teams. I'm not sure what their fixtures have been, but I know they've had Aston Villa, they've had Wolves, they've had Liverpool, they've had Man City. They've had a lot of tough games, so I'm kind of interested to see how they will look against the weaker teams that they can't counter attack as freely, because those teams obviously will sit back more. Who do you think will finish higher? Gun to the head right now.
Leeds.
Oh my god! What?
I beat you 3-0.
You actually, are you just winding me up?
No,
No, that's fair.
It's
fair. They did beat us 3-0. It's not an unjust prediction.
Yeah, but I think it'll be potentially side by side, sort of 9th and 10th, or 10th or 11th, or 11th, 12th, something. I think that like 9 to 12 sort of.
Would you take Bielsa as the United manager? Because I see a lot of talk of Mauricio Pochettino being the replacement if Solskjaer is to go, and I think he done a fantastic job at Spurs. But he had some fantastic players and he didn't win anything. Yeah, and that's not good enough if you're not a manager. Now, I do think he done a great job. He turned them from nowhere near challenging regularly for top 4 to. But anyway, the question I'm asking is Bielsa, because the way Bielsa plays football, I'd love to see. I think he's like the maverick that would be great for United.
I could see it. I mean, Fergie's thing always was that United is a club, and as I think all football clubs should be, that is there to entertain the people who come to watch them play. And so many times we hear, like I've alluded to before, stories of him saying at least give him something to watch. Yeah. And Bielsa strikes me as that sort of manager who wants to go out and play attractive attacking football, which has been missing and lacking at United, certainly under Moyes, Mourinho.
Solskjaer's been trying to find that identity.
He's been trying to find that identity, but he's kind
really of.
I feel like he might have abandoned it a little bit, as I said in the last, not abandoned it, but just
let's move on to the United game.
Yeah. Anyway, I would take Bielsa. Long story short, and I feel almost as though Bielsa is more capable of winning a Premier League title than Pochettino would be, just because you need an element of wildcardness or fearlessness. Yeah, and I think Pochettino could be a little bit safe.
Okay. So United played against Chelsea this weekend after coming off a pretty spectacular result in Paris.
Can we talk about that game in its entirety rather than the Chelsea game?
Obviously, United this week, they beat Newcastle, they beat PSG. At the beginning of the week, if you said we'll get 2 wins and a draw out of those games, you would have snapped it off. But it did feel that this Chelsea team, given how they set up and given the confidence have United had from winning in Paris, it was there for the taking. And I don't know how you feel, but when I see United's lineup, I understand he wants Fred and McTominay because the more attacking teams, they win a lot of balls in midfields, they get quick turnovers, they get quick attacks. Like, I can see it. But when Pogba doesn't play and Van de Beek is in the stands and doesn't get a minute of football, when he's looked like your best player outside Fernandes, when he comes onto the pitch, what does that say to him? And what does it say, exactly what you're talking about a minute ago, to the United fans who want to see their team attack to try win games rather than sit and counterattack all the time, rather than be proactive and go after teams?
Well, I think we spoke about this actually on last week's episode, Fintan, about Van de Beek. Like, is he only going to play if Fernandes and Pogba are both out? And it's looking more and more like that. I don't, for the life of me, understand why. If that's the case, why this signing was the first signing that we did in the summer. And it seemed like this signing was the one that we actually sort of had planned and executed and got over the line as sort of it was
quite
plan
smooth.
that we
had.
Very
un-United like.
That wasn't one that was like a last minute signing. This was like, this is our guy. This is the player we want. We go out, we get him, we signed him, and it was done. So it is a little bit confusing as to why that was the case, and now Donny seems to be not in first team plans at all.
I mean, the fact that he just got 0 minutes. The only thing I would say against Chelsea is you had a very, very strong bench due to the fact of what your starting lineup was. You had Mason Greenwood on the bench. You had Pogba, who were 2 of the subs.
And Cavani.
and Cavani was the other sub.
Yeah,
So
and second half when we brought Pogba and Cavani on, I
it
was
did
sort
look
of
like
like,
you were going to turn it around.
yeah, and I was like, we looked pretty good once Pogba came on. Looked better, took more control of the game, and it was one of those where I was actually quite happy with the bench because you see Greenwood and Cavani and Pogba, and those all very good options. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, they're all
It's a-
options, right? It's not like bringing on, no disrespect, Jesse Lingard as we had a couple of times last season. We just think, and I'm whatever. I think Jesse Lingard has added things to Manchester United in the past, but it is an uninspiring substitute compared to what we had. I don't know what's going on with this Dan James in the starting lineup, and I saw.
I honestly think that is Solskjaer being to the board. I have nobody who can play right wing because I cannot play Mason Greenwood there every single game. Matt is too old and too slow to play in that position.
Yeah.
Dan James is my only option, and you did not get me Sancho.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what's going on a little because it makes no sense otherwise. He's out of his depth. He had a fire start to last season, but he's either lacking a bit of confidence or just a little bit of quality. He's of course got a lot of pace, but he doesn't have the stature, or he's just not good enough to be starting for Manchester United if you want to challenge for top four and play in the Champions League. And that's just a reality. And it's not his fault that he got signed the way he did.
Absolutely.
But that's just the truth.
I agree. And I think again, Dan James is a player that actually probably okay in some sort of squad rotation system, and that's what he's in. But to be starting games like this at home, and when we do seemingly have other options, I mean, obviously some of this is born of the fact that Martial's out for a 3-game suspension because Eric Lamella's trying to win Oscars or something. And the Premier League don't have the bottle to actually overturn what was a quite silly red card. So we started with Dan James and Juan Mata, with Pogba, Cavani, Greenwood, Van der Beek not in the starting lineup. And
Alex Tellez nowhere near the starting lineup.
Tellez not in the lineup. And I'll tell you as well, Tuanzebe, who was excellent against Paris Saint-Germain. Wan-Bissaka had a very good game against Paris Saint-Germain as well. I thought defensively he was very good. I thought Tuanzebe was very, very promising in that we talk about in the previous weeks of this podcast some of Manchester United's lack of signing of a centre-half and Harry Maguire's performances. Tuanzebe is a player who's just like, well, there it is.
He was at Aston Villa, mate, when we
sure. And thought of very highly amongst the Villa fans, if I'm not mistaken.
I think it was the year we went up.
He was really good there,
yeah,
right?
he was exceptional. He was an exceptional defender, and we were trying and hoping that we'd get him on a permanent transfer, but United were having absolutely none of it.
Clearly a very, very talented
what
defender.
Does it say, though, about... The thing I would say is it was his first game back. Maybe the fitness to play 2 games in 4 days after such a long time out could be a factor. But what does it say to these players when Solskjaer, you have one of the best performances of your life, you pocket Neymar and Mbappe, and if he's fully fit, it's just like, oh, Harry Maguire, who's been absolutely shocking all season, got arrested over there in Greece, and his head is up his arse. Yeah, he's getting into the team ahead of you. Sorry, mate.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think it sends quite the right message because there was a lot of rotation out from what would be one of the better Manchester United performances of the last couple seasons away at PSG.
I would say the best because it was much better than the actual performance that you qualified on.
Well, when we won the night in Paris last season, that was
the original.
That was. There's a little bit of fluke to that. There was a last-minute decision that went our way with a handball, and we did well, and we showed resilience and Lukaku whatnot.
But you got barred.
Yeah, but this was more like we actually went there and we deserved at least something from the game. I think we deserved at least.
I think you're the better team.
Yeah, we were the better team. So it doesn't strike me as logical to offer so much rotation. And if we can just touch on the game itself for a minute, obviously a 0-0 result here. Our predictions were 3-0 to United from me because I'm a disgustingly biased United fan, and 4-3 Chelsea from yourself predicting.
We got a little bit carried away with how many goals we're going down in the Premier League so far. This has been the first week of, I guess, normality almost.
Yeah, and there were. What was frustrating as a United fan watching this game was obviously Chelsea's weakness in defence has been their sort of undoing this season, and teams like West Brom putting 3 past them. We created chances. We had a lot of clear-cut chances. It was in the first half, Marcus Rashford threw on goal 1-1. I think he needs to take an extra touch, and Mendy made a save with his foot down low. Second half, right at the end, there was a bending shot from sort of 25 yards outside that I thought was goal-bound, but Mendy saves again. And
Mendy made a few good saves.
Yeah, he did
that
actually.
Might have been solved.
He did
Frank
actually.
Lampard came out in a press conference and said that ever since he took charge, I think only Man City have conceded less shots on goal than Chelsea, but Chelsea have just conceded like boatloads of goals because of
Too
Kepa
many
and the
shots
goalkeeping
at
situation,
goal.
maybe
Yeah,
small. But
yeah.
so yeah, he was the difference in this game. It felt. Do you think either Frank or do you want? Is there anything else you want to say on the game before I move it on? Sorry.
Not really. I think it's quite clear that we don't know where our starting 11 is, and I don't know whether that's deliberate of just sort of having multiple approaches, be it European football, Premier League football, and I do think this Dan James thing needs to stop. I am actually a big Juan Mata fan, and I do think he still has stuff to offer, as I mentioned before. I thought he had stuff to offer in this game, and certainly, playing on the counter attack against Newcastle. I don't actually buy into this.
Team with McTominay and Fred though is a little much.
That might be your problem in that it's a little bit too slow and conservative in terms of the break. He doesn't necessarily always slow the counter attack down though. Obviously, like getting bodies forward is less of an option, but when you have
he plays the pass that
you need. Like if you look at the Newcastle goal on the break, it was Mata who slid the pass in behind, or sort of was that interlink between Fernandes and Rashford. Yeah. So I'm not buying into this. He slows down our counter entirely, but you're absolutely right that when you have McTominay, Fred, and Mata, you have less opportunities in terms of a counter attack than if you say even sitting a Pogba in there, like his legs getting forward if needs be, or something along those lines, right? So
and he's just instinctively just wants to get forward a lot more.
Exactly.
Not that Matt is obviously a player that wants to play further up the pitch as well, but he's not breaking the lines.
He's not breaking the lines
a lot of the time.
But he's finding those balls that need to be found, and I'm certainly a Juan Mata fan. But yeah, this didn't quite work for United. It didn't quite work for Chelsea. It's actually quite sort of dull game. There were some clear cut moments, but certainly periods and spells where neither team looked like a team that would have enough quality to challenge for the top four. Ultimately, given the way the league is shaping up, I think both can take comfort in the fact that that race is still wide open. It's still wide open.
I think if United win their game in hand, they're only 3 points behind Liverpool, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, we've been lucky in that we've had a rough start, but everybody's dropping points.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on. West Ham versus Manchester City. I think I made a pretty bold prediction for this game, we will call it.
You have predicted 4-0 to Man City. I have predicted 3-1 to West Ham. So both of us went for the City win, and that is not what happened, Fintan. We had a 1-1 here. Another really excellent result for West Ham, who I looked at the bookies odds at the start of the season and said I want money on them to go down. Obviously, they've been excellent without David Moyes. They've shown resilience now with David Moyes back on the touchline. Mikel Antonio with another excellent goal here, an overhead kick in the first half to put.
It's pretty crazy that he was a right back for years, and now he's just up front and banging in goals.
I have a friend.
How has he come through the ranks, and they've seen this lad who's clearly very good at finishing, great at holding up the ball. And they're like, right back, mate.
Well, why we have actually this season, Dominic Calvert-Lewin was playing at right wing.
That was one game under Coleman, which it was rightly ridiculed.
And
Antonio played the majority of his career, I think.
Antonio right back into striker. Who's next? Who have we got? So this is with Gary Neville.
Maybe Wan-Bissaka?
Gary Neville was a caged bird, perhaps. He was a 30-goal-a-season man, but being forced.
So many kids could have grown up dreaming to actually be Gary Neville. But yeah, West Ham, like you said, their form has been pretty crazy. First 2 games of the season, Newcastle, Arsenal, they lose, and now they've gone 4-0 against Wolves. They beat Leicester 3-0. They drew against Spurs, and now they draw against City. It's pretty crazy for West Ham. But the point that I want to talk about again, because I think you maybe named our first episode, is Pep a myth?
Yes.
If I remember correctly. He's now got 2 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss this season. Last season, ultimately, was a bit of a disaster for City. They went back-to-back seasons where they had, I think, 100 points and 99 points. They looked like the greatest Premier League team of all time, arguably.
I'll just
longevity is a factor that has to.
Just glossing over that. That's going in one ear out the other. That's a subject for
arguably one of the greatest teams in the Premier League, and they made Liverpool raise their game. But now Pep somewhat looks lost with the players that he has, and their recruitment hasn't been as good. Man City for years signed they signed a lot of players, but they signed such great players that gave them such long careers at the clubs. Like when you think Aguero, Company, Sterling,
Silva.
um, Silva, like these players all came in and gave like 6, 7, 8 years of their prime
Yeah.
to Manchester City, and I just don't know if they've replaced those players with the signings they're making. Like, do you think Nathan Ake is gonna eventually be regarded in the same words as Company? Like, I'm not saying every player needs to be bought to be a club legend, but they signed the winger from Valencia, Ferreira. Is that how you pronounce his name? I'm not sure. But just these players, I'm just not sure if they're up to scratch. And the one player that you think could potentially go on and become a club legend, given what we've seen of him so far, of course, he had a little misdemeanor at the start of the season, but Phil Foden can't seem to really break into the starting side. But every time he comes on and every time he starts and every time he plays, he scores, he assists, he looks exceptional for his age. It could be a case of Pep Guardiola wanting to protect him, but he seems the natural heir to David Silva's throne, who has now left the club. Do you think, as an English person, he should be trusted more? Not him in particular, like just because you're like you obviously hear more about him, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know what it is because he's actually there's been a couple seasons now, right? Like he had a very good goal scoring record whenever he's played.
It's just been exceptional.
Yeah, and I don't quite understand why he's not sort of being pushed into more of a prominent role at the club. He has scored here a very, very well taken goal. I actually thought that once City had equalised in the second half, and they equalised real early with this Foden goal, it really struck me as a sort of pullback that in previous seasons, or perhaps with stronger teams, City would go on and win 3 or 4-1. You know, that momentum when you get an early goal in the second half, usually a title-winning team, you know, this is the sort of one that they then parlay into 3 points. But that was not forthcoming, which again speaks to West Ham's resilience we've spoken about before, and their ability to pick up important points this season. But I don't know what it is. Whether it's that typical English thing of trying to, English players in the spotlight, and obviously he had the incident with Greenwood on the international game, the Iceland thing. Whether there's just like question marks over temperament or discipline, or like, I don't know what it is with this, but certainly talented enough. Typically reactionary response on Twitter where he's the moment the ball across the line, people were touting him as, and people say Greenwood's the most promising English talent. Obviously, it's Phil Foden. So, and it's obviously like one goal does not a player make, but he is that good. And obviously,
they're also completely different players. That's what always annoys me about the way the English media go on. People will be talking about Jack Grealish and Wan-Bissaka. I know that's like a terrible
right, but it's, you know, like, what I mean?
Like
it's apples and oranges. It's
exactly. Phil Foden and Greenwood have the potential to propel England to maybe another disappointing semi-final in the course of the next.
Hey, fingers crossed. Phil Foden could be missing a penalty in a quarter-final of a World Cup in a couple of years' time.
But yeah, it's what do you think? Is Pep starting to be getting under pressure? Do you think maybe he's running out of steam? Do you think he'll stick it out to do a rebuilding job? Does he? He's never done that before in his career. Like he's always
sort of left at the pinnacle of whatever team, right? Sort of,
or just one cycle.
Like, once
right?
the going's good,
3-4 years,
yeah,
and then he's out there.
Hard to say. It's very hard to say. I think there might be. I think the big thing for City and the big thing for Pep is some sort of Champions League success, right? It would not surprise me.
Get it though.
I don't know if they are. I really don't know if they are, because previous seasons it's felt like it's their season. You know, they've been in the Premier League seasons where they've been excellent and sort of dominated the league, but I don't think they're there at the moment. And so, it might be tougher than ever for them to lift a Champions League trophy. And, I wouldn't like to predict what's going to happen. I think there is still a very, very good chance that they win the Premier League this year.
It could happen for sure.
But
there's no doubt.
Is that really is that the success? Does that cement Pep as have job done? Probably not. I think if he
stops that Liverpool team after their emergence last year, even though there's factors that have gone down, including the Van Dijk injury, I think if he wins the league this year after Liverpool being so dominant last year, I think that would be a successful season.
It would be a successful season. It would definitely be a successful season, of course. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying is that enough?
You mean
That Pep is
legacy-wise?
like legacy, like it's
Well, he's never won a Champions League without Messi, right?
Yeah, that's
And
what I mean.
that's
Like
gonna
that, I
hold.
think that's what he needs to do at City is that level of success of like, okay, now he can do it wherever. Like that myth tag is sort of lifted in a way because City winning another league title, okay, like it's a very good Liverpool team, but it's a Liverpool team this season that is going to be without a key component of their success from last. So I don't think it's enough. And it'd be very interesting to see how City's season continues to unfold. This is another disappointing result. And they, again, like everybody else in the league, might not quite be firing on all cylinders, which is going to make for a very exciting season. But is it enough to confirm that Pep Guardiola is not just sort of I don't know, does it with the best players in the world, and I could have managed teams in the same way that he
manager.
does. Yeah, checkbook manager.
All right, moving on. We're just going to run through the games in the order that they came otherwise because nothing really stuck out this week.
Well, actually, Fintan, the annoying thing is we have to talk about Southampton at some point this week. We'll get to that, but we try to avoid all discussions of Southampton Football Club because they're the most anonymous team in the league. Even though if
they didn't have Danny Ings, I'm pretty sure they would have got relegated last year by record low points.
Yes, I 100%.
Let's save these shots for when we get down to that game, because we know we have one big Southampton fan who's going to be grinding his teeth and clenching his fists right now.
Madder and madder.
Fulham versus Crystal Palace. It's another loss for Fulham. They draw to fellow one-pointers Sheffield United last time, and
fellow one-pointers, the 1 point club. They are the one-pointers.
I mean, like we already joked around that they got paid out on game week 2 after losing Aston Villa by Paddy Power. They're gone. I don't think there's anything to really discuss in terms of Fulham's hopes of staying in the league. They are the most hopeless team I've seen since Aston Villa about, 6 years ago now, where we got about 15 points, and I was still there with like 9 games to go. Like, you never know, boys.
You never know.
Wilder
things have happened.
But Crystal Palace, they win again. They are not the most fun team to watch, but with Saha in the team, they have just got one player who can change the game. And again, he scores, he assists. I was thinking about him. I'm not sure if we've discussed this on the podcast, but he is not looking like he's going to get that big move in his career now, because I was reading an article on The Athletic, and they were saying he kept signing new 5-year contracts. Like every year, his agents go in, they get him a little pay rise. But Crystal Palace have timed down to a 5-year contract.
Yeah.
So they have all the power. He's like 27, 28 years old, I think. And they have him tied down till he's 33 now. So they're like, we want £70 million. And Everton, Arsenal, Dortmund are like, we'll give you 40. And they're like, that's just not the value of this player in this market. So I think he is going to be stuck at Palace potentially for the rest of his career, because no one's going to take a big gamble on a player that's 29, 30 years old. Most of the big transfers that have gone down historically in the last like 5-6 years have been players with a lot of resale value. You could argue Neymar was slightly outside that, but I even think he was only 26 at the time. So I don't think Zaha's going to get the move, but I think it's a pity, and I think he is actually a player that if he was in the Manchester United team, now I don't think you're going to buy him back, he would improve your side.
He absolutely would improve our side. I think United came, the Zaha United thing came at a weird time. Obviously,
Fergie's last signing, he was supposed to be a little gift. It was like, this player is class, I'm leaving him for you.
Yeah, and it turns out that he was, but I think it came perhaps a little bit early for Zaha, where his performances at United didn't indicate that he would become the player he is today.
It's tough under Moyes, though.
Yeah, but like I say, it wasn't quite the right time for him to be at the club, and that there was a transitionary period, and it just never quite happened. And then, of course, was let go, and now you've sort of player that we're begging for. Like, I think he would do an excellent job for United. You could be right, Fintan. He could just be one of those sort of Palace legends. But I do think, without upsetting all the Crystal Palace fans that we have listening to this pod every week. I'm sure there are literally 4 of you, if that. I do think it's a shame that he's not going to be involved in a club challenging for Premier League titles. I think he deserves to be. I think he's good enough to be. I think he would add quality to most sides in and around the top 6.
Yeah, it's tough though. Like, I don't see him getting into the Man City team or the Liverpool team. And now I don't see him getting into the Chelsea team with all the signings they've made.
Yeah.
Tottenham have just got Gareth Bale, and so like I think like if he was at the club, I 100% think he would get game time, whichever club it was. But to add that player,
they're not going to sign him now
teams,
because they kind of have those players already settled in, and
especially for the money that will be
needed.
needed.
Absolutely.
It's
I mean, we should just touch on the fact that Palace are 8th in the league with 10 points. They're 3 points off top. I think Palace again are going to be good enough to stay up, not good enough to break top 10. Probably just a very safe, quiet 13th, 14th, sort of 12th, 13th, 14th season, which as a Palace fan, you take, right? Like for so many years,
it is
Palace
sad
trying
that
to
you
stay
take
in.
it though, right?
I don't know if it is though, because let's look back at some of the teams that. Here's what frustrates me: Palace for years have been in the Championship. They've been in the Premier League. They've sort of another one of those yo-yo clubs to a point. They're a little more well established in recent years.
Yeah, they're reasonably established now. Yeah,
they're reasonably established, but Stoke were reasonably established. Bolton were reasonably established. So many of these teams get reasonably established, and then they say, this isn't enough. We need to be pushing on. There's that constant improvement. We have to do better than last season. And what happens then is that over-ambitiousness, you boot out managers like...
I don't think that's true. I think it's under-ambition most of the time, where they stop putting in the money and they stop supporting. I honestly don't think it's the other way. I'm not sure it is,
mate. I think some of it is like... They
get rid of the safe bet. They get rid of
your Tony Pulis. You get rid of your Sam Allardyce because like we're not playing the right style of football now. And it's these clubs, being in the Premier League every season. That's where the club should strive to be. And I think there's a danger of like, I'm not saying this is happening at Palace, but I'm saying like a lot of these teams don't forget where you came from. Is what I mean, because you can so quickly return back to not being in the Premier League and getting stuck in the Championship, and it happens all the time. So Palace fans have got to be happy with just like staying in the league and comfortably staying in the league and picking up good results. That's what they're doing, and I think that's contentedness, isn't it?
All right, moving on. Liverpool versus Sheffield United. Liverpool win 2-1. Not the most convincing win. What did we predict score-wise for this game? I think we went big.
Both of us went 4-0. Actually, I went 4-0, then you said you were going to go 4-0, but then you said you wouldn't because I went 4-0, so you went 5-0.
All right.
So it was certainly a lot less of an emphatic win for Liverpool than we might have expected.
Maybe somewhat disrespectful from the two of us towards Sheffield United, who, whilst they have not had a very good start to the season, if you look at the games that they've had, I don't think they've lost by more than one goal in any game. Every game they've been in, it's all been close. But at the same time, they've 1 point so far this season, and they only have 3 goals scored. 2 of their goals have been penalties. One of the questions is, will they been exposed? Are the Blades at a real risk of relegation? And I don't think so. I don't think they're going to go down. I know that's a big statement. I just think they'll pull it together. I think they've had tough games. I think they've been in the games. The fact that they have 1 goal outside of penalties is not good enough, and that is very, very worrying given the amount of goals that have been scored in this Premier League season in particular. But I just think they were so good last season. They signed some good players. Henderson was a massive loss for them, the goalkeeper who's now sitting on the bench at Manchester United, which is hopefully not going to put a damper on his career too much. And like if he doesn't get to replace the guy, hopefully he moves on. Because he's a top class goalkeeper. But I don't know, man. I just feel like they're good enough. I just feel like they're not going to go down. And I think that Sheffield United as a board, given what Wilder's done, like if they even talk about sacking him, I think it's crazy. Like he's brought them up and just has them playing good football. He has them attacking. I think they got maybe 8 last year. They were challenging for top 4 at one point. I don't think anyone fancied them to get out of the Championship when they did. I could be wrong on this, but I think he actually brought them up through from League One as well. And he stuck with some of the players. I think he's really like Mr. Sheffield United. So this is the kind of thing where you're talking about. Like if the fans are on his back and want him to go on, that's where I think it would be an absolute disgrace. And I think stick with him. He'll come good. I think Fulham, West Brom, and another club will go down.
Yeah, so I think this is, this is kind of what I was just touching on, of sort of upsetting the balance because this is a little bit different because we're not talking about sort of getting into a comfortable Premier League spot and then wanting more. But Chris Wilder does not suddenly become a very bad manager overnight. He's clearly worked absolute wonders with Sheffield United. And I know there's an effect of, even though he's not a bad manager, perhaps, someone new, someone fresh, players like play whatever. But I don't think there's any hint of that. I don't think there's any sense of that. And let's not lose sight of the fact that this is still 6 games into the season. and like you say, they've been in games. The lack of scoring is a problem, but they've been in games, and they were in this game. They were competitive in this game at the very least, and it was a little bit of a scrappier win for Liverpool. I'm not suggesting that Sheffield United deserves or should take any points from this, but it's not a 4-0, 5-0. Okay, now we're getting turned over sort of result. I think they will stick with Wilder. I'm not entirely convinced, as you might be, that they're going to stay up.
I'm not convinced, but
I'm not. I might.
Don't get me wrong. I think they could be in a relegation battle. It's very much looking like that.
Sure.
But I think another team will get dragged down.
Well, just looking at the league at the moment, let's assume Fulham, we're writing them off. They're bottom of the league. Obviously fellow 1-pointers.
I think Burnley could be.
Burnley have got 1 point, but so it's Fulham bottom, Sheffield United 1 point, Burnley 1 point.
I still think Newcastle could be a team that could struggle, even though they've had some points.
West Brom 3 points, Brighton 5, Manchester United 7. So they do well to stay in the league. Newcastle 8 points and City 8. It's really, really hard to look outside of that bottom 5 for maybe Newcastle. You think Newcastle?
I think Newcastle
potentially getting dragged into it, but I tend to think that they've got
too much quality,
a little bit too much quality and a little bit too much about them. So it's really hard to look past that 5 of Fulham, Sheffield United, Burnley, West Brom, and Brighton. Actually, in the opening couple fixtures of the season, we spoke about Brighton looking really good.
I still think
looking
they do
strong.
Look really good. I watched the game.
Yeah, so then that leaves 3 from potentially 4. I mean, maybe I think we're probably seeing Fulham, Burnley leave.
I think we need to give another 7-8 games until you can say 3 from 4. I
don't know, mate. I'm ready to commit. I'm committing right now. Fulham are gone.
Well, you think Sheffield United are gone?
I think Fulham and Burnley are gone, and I think West Brom and Sheffield United are a coin flip.
Do you remember how they were talking about them last season? Everyone was saying they were such a good team. They look quality. They were absolutely taking it to everybody. I think they've been somewhat unlucky with their fixtures and the way the games have gone. They were very lucky to get the penalty in this game, but look, I'm gonna say Sheffield United are not dead and buried yet. No chance.
Okay, not dead and buried, but they're in big trouble. I think they're
definitely in trouble. It's worrying signs. There's no doubt about that. What about Liverpool? One thing, it's not the exact same, but you know the way you talk about managers getting sacked because of the pressure from fans. What do you think of the pressure from certain parts? Maybe not some Liverpool fans will listen to this. They will agree with everything that Klopp says, but I do see it on social media that some Liverpool fans are calling for Firmino to be dropped because he doesn't score enough goals. But Klopp says he is how it all ticks. His running, his movement, his hold up, the way he brings Mane and Salah into the game. And Klopp has obviously done miraculously well at that Liverpool team. He is the greatest manager they've had in the last 15, 20 years or whatever. I don't want to go further back because I know there's some legends that I'll get angry Liverpoolians in the comments.
You probably already made them angry because Liverpool fans love Rafa Benitez for whatever reason. So there's probably some argument there. But yes, I would agree. Obviously, Jurgen Klopp delivering a Premier League title, and he's really made Liverpool into the force that they are over the last couple of years. Yeah,
he's the only manager I feel in modern football that I can think of off the top of my head that has that striker now in terms of the top teams where they're kind of happy if he doesn't score goals as long as he does everything else. Mm-hmm. Whereas when you think of Man United, Rashford and Martial last season both scored over 20 goals, and a lot of fans we need a proper number 9.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just I'm interested in what people think. Should Firmino keep playing? It was interesting that he went with Salah, Mane, and Jota in this game with Firmino, which is a lot of firepower on the pitch. It didn't really lead to the most fluent and open game, and we both predicted big scores, and it was, like we said, it was scrappy, it was tight. Liverpool don't look at it the way they did since they've won the title. No. And it's not just because of Van Dijk, because obviously Van Dijk is a loss in terms of defense, but their attack hasn't really been
not quite clicked the way it was.
But it just doesn't seem as fluid. It doesn't seem as good. But you reckon they're still favourites alongside City? They have to be, right?
Yeah, I definitely think City are probably ahead in terms of favourites for the league after the Van Dijk situation. Liverpool are going to be
at the moment they're 5 points behind, right?
Let me see here now. Liverpool currently 13 points and Man City 8. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. You speak about United's bad side season. They have 7 points. City only have 8. But it's still, that's what I say, we're still sort of in the infancy of the league, and no one's running away with it, and anything's possible. But I just think in terms of what we've seen in depth in squad and quality, those two are still 1 and 2 in some capacity, probably City and Liverpool. I do think Liverpool, this is actually the sort of result that would make me more likely to think they'd become champions, because it was kind of a scrappy game and they still come away with 3 points. This is the one that makes you, this is the sort of game that you need to win if you're going to be up there. So credit where it's due. We did think this would be a bit more of a free-flowing, high-scoring affair for Liverpool, but 3 points nonetheless.
All right, we have a couple more games to fly through. We are going to go to the Danny Ings. Did Danny Ings score?
No, but
he did not. But
kind of 2 assists, so sort of 2 halves make a goal. Danny Ings watch. This is a really
Southampton versus Everton.
Yes, Southampton Everton.
What were their predictions?
We predicted Everton to win. I predicted Everton to win 2-1. You predicted Everton to win 3-1. This is probably the upset of the weekend.
You could definitely argue that, but I think Southampton have been looking reasonably good. And you talk about teams pulling the trigger. Southampton lost 9-0 to Leicester last year.
Yeah.
9-0.
Yeah.
And they weren't in the best of form. There is not many managers that would have the backing of their board in that position.
Yeah. He was very nearly gone though, wasn't he?
Hasenhüttl looks to be one of those managers akin to a little bit like Pochettino in the terms of the way he sets his teams up to press or compact. There's some people comparing him. I think they're calling him the Swiss Jurgen Klopp, is what I was told. Is what I heard.
I actually one of my friends this week in our group chat said that if he was as sexy as Pochettino was, he'd be touted for a top club in England. But he's definitely sort of flying under the radar a little bit.
I think he's starting to get more attention now, though.
Yeah,
they're playing nice football. Obviously, we joke about them being a team that's completely dependent on Danny Ings, and whilst he is a top class player, they have a lot of other elements to their squad that are looking good. Obviously, a big upset for Everton, though, who had came out flying. They looked absolutely terrible in this game. They just didn't look at it. Maybe James Rodriguez was injured. There was talk of him not making this game, and then he made the game. So it could be a little bit of that. But obviously, Everton are still flying this season.
Yeah, and they had
these two teams?
Sorry, they had a Dina red card at the end of the game as well for sort of a weird coming together where he's running and
when I first seen it, I said never red card.
Right, but
when I watched the replay, he's putting his hands up to apologize, and then he doesn't move his foot.
Yeah,
he holds it and lets it slide down the back of the Achilles. And anytime you slide down the back of the Achilles, it's very dangerous, right?
Yeah, it was a weird one. And then his dismissal late on. This wasn't like Everton played with 10 men, and that's the cause of the result. They were sort of out of the game. This is very late sending off. I think he's a big loss for them. From the Everton games that I've seen, he's been really, really good. I've mentioned before how impressed I've been with him. Back into last season and this season, Dina's been excellent. Rodriguez potentially has a knock or wasn't quite putting in the performance that we've expected from him this season. And again, we spoke about the Liverpool result being one that makes me think that they're going to be challenging for the league. This is a sort of result where you think that's the reason why Everton aren't going to be title contenders.
No, absolutely.
And probably I think they were never going to be the top four. No, I mean, it's a promising start and some fun signings, and they've looked very solid.
I'm sure if you listen to our episodes at some point, we were like, oh, you never know.
Right, and you do never know, especially with the league as it is. But I do think this is the sort of one that sees them finish sort of outside the top four, probably. Just lacking that killer instinct or that little bit of consistent quality. But excellent for Southampton. And
do you think Danny Ings is there? Is he as a ha? Is he another case of as a has? Like he tried his big move to Liverpool, he got injured.
Yeah, the injury is a problem. I think it might be a little bit late on now for Danny Ings to get another move of that magnitude. But there's no. That's not to say he's not a quality player. There's plenty of quality players in the Premier League, and Southampton and scoring goals consistently in the Premier League is about where he's at. I think this is about a good level for Danny Ings. He's doing very, very well. I'd be surprised if he gets another sort of top 6.
He also might not want to take it.
Yeah,
he's getting to the age where he wants to keep playing football. He's got himself in the England squad. If you go to United, if you go to Liverpool, if you go to one of these clubs, you're not guaranteed game time. You're getting older, and then you're just gonna have to potentially go and do this again, where you rebuild yourself at a club lower down the table.
So what now, Fintan? Is Southampton? Do we have to start talking about Southampton every week? Are they going to be a top 10
I think. Listen, they're up in the 7th in the league, but I think we're still on Danny Ings' watch. And if Danny Ings keeps banging in the goals and they start flirting with a top 6 finish, we'll discuss them a little bit more. But let's move on. That's honestly the way too long that we've been talking about Southampton. Wolves versus Newcastle. Steve Bruce ball in full effect. The most drab football that you will ever see in your life. It's only a matter of time before that man has another cabbage thrown at him from a fan. They might not have fans in the stadium, but they will somehow find a way to do it.
Some sort of catapult over the top of St. James's Park.
Sorry for Newcastle fans. I went through it with Bruce. Bruce had a tough situation at Aston Villa, but the reality is the football he plays is depressing as fuck. It is just so boring.
And yeah,
this Wolves team.
We predicted Wolves. I predicted a 2-0 win. You predicted a 3-1 win. And Steve Bruce comes away with a point because he's a champion and a hero.
I mean, he's a Manchester United legend, of course. So I need to be careful how I talk about Brucey around young Benjamin Sprague. But this Wolves team, they only have 6 goals in 6 games. They obviously have some very attacking players. Jimenez has 4 of those goals, and he was a player that was touted with a move to Manchester United during the summer. But again, a player that was touted with a large fee for a player who's 27, 28. He might even be 29. But do you think that if this Wolves team keep playing football like this, they're going to be able to challenge again? Or do you think they're just a little bit too defensive, too negative? Maybe do you know what they kind of, it's the Portuguese thing running through them, but they kind of remind me in the way that Mourinho would set up some of his earlier teams, not so much Chelsea and that, but like the Porto team, the Inter Milan team, which obviously was after Chelsea, where like the players might not be the best players in the league, but they're so solid and they have 1 or 2 individual players who can have a moment of magic, and that's kind of been enough.
Yeah, and I think that is certainly enough. I don't think it's enough for them to break into, as perhaps been spoken about, sort of a top 6. They're probably a little bit too disrupted for me this season. I'd be very surprised if they're going to be able to.
Did they get 6 last year? I can't remember.
They were certainly up there. Yeah, and I think they're a little bit too disrupted with having lost Jota and same guy whose name I forgot last week. That centre half.
Doherty.
Yeah, same talking point from last
Doherty.
week. But I tell you, I actually watched this game for my sins, and the Newcastle equaliser was a really very, very, very poor piece of goalkeeping where a free kick has been whipped in.
I thought it was just a poor wall.
It was a poor wall, but you've got to. The thing is, once the ball,
you shouldn't be as a right footer. You shouldn't be able to curl the ball around the wall so easily.
Right, but once the ball leaves his feet, there's only one place it can go. As a goalkeeper, as soon as the ball leaves his feet, and he's going
low and right.
There, low and right. You know where it's going to be, and he gets an arm behind it, but it's very, very, very weak. Sort of arm behind it. He doesn't get his body down. He doesn't get his body behind it. I thought it was very, very poor. And it really was like a sort of rudimentary, just basics sort of save that should have been made and wasn't. And it's ended up costing Wolves a couple of points. And again, Newcastle.
I think Newcastle are going to be relegation candidates this year. I actually do.
They don't look good. But I think maybe they have.
They do have the couple of players in Wilson and Maximan.
But clubs have gone down with exciting attacking talent before and been involved in relegation battles before, because outside of that, they're just particularly uninspiring. And as you say, I don't think Steve Bruce as a manager is going to particularly inspire too much. So they'll be there and thereabouts, and potentially getting dragged into some stuff. I think Wolves will be not quite good enough to really push on this season, but are doing an okay job of sort of keeping talent and rebuilding talent around this largely Portuguese squad.
All right,
and they'll be fine, but not setting the world alight.
Arsenal versus Leicester. It is again another moment that Jamie Vardy, is having a party.
Now you spoke about the Arteta revolution, Fintan. You said they're looking better. They're not. They're not looking better. They're going to finish
3 out of last 4 games.
Finish 9th or something again. What's going on?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I'm really not. It's not good enough. Obviously, there's a couple of questions that you can ask about the way Arteta's lining up. you can't argue that he's been backed by the board this time. They signed Partey, they signed Willian, they signed Gabriel. They kind of identified the areas of weakness and they excuse me, and they addressed them and they got the players in. I do think they were unlucky to lose this game. They've also played Man City, which is another one of the games they've lost. But yeah, I bigged up Arteta. I thought he was starting to make them a lot more difficult to beat. I thought he was making them, just structurally better and, everything that you wanted from the Arsenal teams over the years that were just a little bit flimsy. I thought he was getting rid of. But the reality is they've lost 3 out of 4 games. He has cut Mesut Ozil completely out of his squad, which, considering the wages he's on, he's clearly just trying to move him on. There's obviously behind the scenes things going on as well that might have a play in this. But how do you not have a player like him in your squad? Like,
I don't know what's going on with it. It's baffling because he was, obviously at the time he was like a top world-class talent, and it was like that's the sort of signing that
in all the top 5 leagues for years and years in a row. Him and Ronaldo were just absolutely ripping it up at Real. I think Ronaldo was quite mad when he got sold to Arsenal. He came there, he was just banging in assists, and now they have Aubameyang and Lacazette up front, which you would think is a wet dream for Ozil to have these players who are making the runs in behind. His weight of pass, his creativity is just, I don't think, matched by anyone else who's in this side. The way they lined up in the middle, they have Partey and Xhaka in the center of the park, and it just doesn't offer that same, threat going forward. They're obviously a very good counter-attacking team, but the stat here is that Lacazette has 30 goals in 102 Premier League games for Arsenal. Do you think that's good enough for a player that is keeping Aubameyang out of the main striker role?
It's not good enough. Yeah. It's not even close to good enough. 30 and 102 Premier League appearances is not a striker that is going to challenge you for the top 4. And Lacazette has not been scoring consistent goals since he joined the club. What, 3 seasons in? 3rd season at Arsenal for Lacazette? 2.5. Like but anyway, 102 games, obviously in the Premier League, it must be 3rd, 4th season maybe.
True.
It's just not scoring on a consistent basis, and that I think is what Arsenal's missing. And like you say, not only is Lacazette not scoring, but he's keeping Aubameyang out of that sort of role, that striker's role. That is, you're sacrificing goals there. There's an opportunity cost with having Lacazette up front. So the goal here against Leicester as well, it's just a punt forward, and it's just like a massive gap in the defence.
It was one pass from Tielemans over the top.
It was one ball over the top and then squared, and Vardy finishes in the 80th minute or whatever it is here, and Leicester come away with all 3 points. Arsenal, I have a bet with someone on Twitter that United are going to finish above Arsenal, and it's sort of a race to the bottom at the moment because Arsenal looked good to start, looked like a promising, much better start to the season. But as you say, 3 losses in the last 4 is this now? Yeah, 3 losses in the last 4 games. And where are they headed now? For how many years are we talking about an Arsenal restructuring, rebuilding? They're going backwards. They seemingly continue to move backwards. Arteta has had time, has made signings, was backed, and they don't seem to be any further forward or any closer back to the team that won multiple Premier League titles under Arsene Wenger. I don't know.
So what you're saying is,
but I don't
Guardiola's a fraud, and Guardiola's little assistant that he brought up is also a fraud.
Patrick Bamford's on fraud watch. No, I don't know, Fintan. I don't know where Arsenal go from here because this is going to be another season. It looks like outside of the top 4, potentially outside of the top 6.
Well, they are lucky in the same way that Manchester United are lucky that whilst they've had a terrible start to the season, so has pretty much everybody else. So if United are still in the top 4 race, Arsenal are very much still in the top 4 race. The league is there for anyone who can get their shit together. If you could just string together, like 4 wins in a row like Aston Villa did at the start or something, but you're one of the top teams, there is the opportunity to just have a gap. Very early doors in this league.
Do we have any more games to do? Because we're eating into time here. Villa Leeds is done. City West.
All right,
we've got Burnley Spurs.
Brighton West Brom.
No one cares. Don't worry about Brighton West Brom. Who cares, mate? I predicted a draw. You predicted a Brighton win.
Last game. Burnley versus Spurs. Harry Kane sets up Son again. It's another assist. Son scores again. It's another goal. He's top of the league in terms of goals scored. Kane is top of the league in terms of assists. I reckon that Mourinho having a dirty 1-0 win away to Burnley, like he'll go home and he'll just be like, that was better than the 6-1 against United. That just gets his blood flowing. He loves a 1-0 win. Loves a clean sheet.
I predicted 3-0 here. You predicted 6-0 here. Burnley Damn, they're
Burnley have
going to get
just 1 point from
relegated.
5 games.
Don't care about
They
Burnley.
are in
They're
a
going to get them
relegation
out of the
fight for
league.
sure. Sean Dyche has overachieved with them, and that's just how it is. They don't invest. This is a team that are lacking investment, right? Like you can say that Dyke's under pressure, but they've never backed him. He's been in the Premier League for like
He's done
3,
an
4,
excellent
5
job.
years now.
Burnley have no right to
Yeah.
have been in the league for as long as they have, and this is one of those things with managers' careers where if Sean Dyche had left, and there was obviously been murmurings of him moving to multiple clubs over the last few seasons, if he'd have left with Burnley cemented in the Premier League as he had done, his stock would be really, really high. I think that the danger is now that he's sort of not been backed, never received any investment in the squad, is potentially going to end up getting relegated, and then it's like, he's taking Burnley down. He's never getting that big move. Which is why it's weird, because it kind of incentivizes managers to jump whilst this team is doing well. Do you know what I mean? It kind of incentivizes them to look
people
for
have
that
too
move.
much egos. People have too much of an ego. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. If a bigger club had came along, I think Dyke would have been out of there, but I'm not sure it ever materialized. Right. We're not going to talk for too long on this. We're just going to get our Tottenham going to challenge for the league title. Not top 4, but the actual league title.
Are they going to challenge for the league title? Yes. Are Kane and Son one of the best Premier League duos we've seen? Let's talk about that, because there's an insane sort of synergy here with Harry Kane, who's typically considered your quote-unquote goal scorer, is getting a ridiculous amount of assists. Son is getting a ridiculous amount of goals. And those two together, if they continue in similar vein, have to be in the conversation for best striker duos or forward duos in Premier League history. Let's talk about others quickly.
Right? You got Bergkamp, you got Henry, you got York and Cole, of course. I'd say
Shearer and Son, the SAS back in the day when Blackburn won the league, 94, 95, or
93, 94. Yeah, for sure.
But are they up there?
I'd say Rooney and Ronaldo to a certain degree, even though they weren't strikers. Like Son's not a striker.
Sure.
They could be up there, but the reality is like they're not up there right now. They're having like an unbelievable moment, and they could have a season that's up there, but they need to win like titles, or they need to win a League Cup, or they need to win an FA Cup before they're like, you've scored a few goals, but you can't just be like one of the greatest duos of all time. You bang in a few goals in the first few weeks of a crazy season.
But they look good together, right? There's like they've played together for years, of course, but this is a little bit newer this season with Son bagging all the goals and Harry Kane's role.
Usually what happened in previous seasons gone by would be Son would shine when Kane was actually injured.
Yeah.
Like Kane would get injured and Son would play like the more advanced role and he'd score a boatload of goals. But now maybe it's a Mourinho tactic, maybe it's the way they play on the counter a little bit more, like Son running in behind, and Kane with his Kevin De Bruyne-esque passing, it's just picking him out time after time. It could be a position that Kane takes up more and more as his career goes on, because he gets injured a lot, has done. So he hasn't got the longevity as a striker who relies on his pace, which he was never really blessed with in the first place.
Yeah.
He was never like darting in behind. He obviously wasn't slow, but
it's a similar thing to what Rooney did.
Teddy Sheringham, or Rooney.
Right, dropping a little bit deeper. In his younger years, Rooney was sort of leading the line and a little bit more reliance on pace and power and shit, driving in behind defenses. And then later on, sort of sat back into more of that behind the forward role.
Like if he plays with Derby County now and he plays midfield, right?
Yeah. But interesting, I think Spurs will be right. I think they look good, mate. They're going to be there or thereabouts. This could really be a season where Spurs genuinely challenge for the league.
I would love Spurs and Mourinho to win the league. Honestly, that would make me so
outside
happy,
of United,
Mourinho...
I would take it. Yes.
All right. Anyway, that is all for this week. Have we got time to do predictions for next week, or
should we do? I think we should do predictions for next week. I don't see any reason why not.
Here we go. I'll call out the fixtures. You write them down. I'll call them out.
Well, I'll write them down at a later date. Let's just rattle them off.
All right. So, first game of the fixtures next week is Wolves at home to Crystal Palace.
2-0 Wolves.
I'm gonna go 1-1. Sheffield United at home to Man City. Not getting easier for the Blades.
Not getting any easier. 4-0.
I'm gonna go 2-0 City. Burnley at home to Chelsea.
Not getting any easier for Burnley. 3-1 Chelsea.
I'm going to go 4-0 Chelsea. I went for the drubbing last time against Spurs. They have it coming, Burnley. Liverpool at home to West Ham. West Ham being a bogey team for the big team so far.
Yeah, West Ham doing well, but I think 2-0 Liverpool.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 3-1. Aston Villa, Southampton.
That's an interesting one, especially with Southampton's recent result and Villa's defeat to Leeds. Oof. 2-1 Villa. I think you bounce back.
Yeah, I think it could be a tough game, and I think it could go anyway. But like, I've got my Villa cap on. I can't help it. I'm going to go for 2-0. Newcastle versus Everton.
1-1.
I'm going to go 3-0 to Everton. United at home to Arsenal.
3-0 United.
I'm going to go 2-1 United. Spurs versus Brighton at home.
4-0 Spurs.
3-0 Spurs. Fulham versus West Brom.
Oh, geez. Cancel it. Cancel it.
I'm going to go 0-0.
Yeah, 1-0 West Brom.
Leeds at home to Leicester City.
Oh, that's a fun game. That's a very fun game. That's
game.
Monday night, is it? Leeds Leicester. 2-2.
I'm going to go... I'm going to go 1-0. I'm going to bottle it and just go 1-0. I don't know, man. That game could go either way. I think Leeds could win 4-0 or Leicester could catch them like 4-0 as well. Like, I really think with the way they play, it could go anyway.
There's some fun fixtures in there, though. I'm looking forward to it. Well, Fintan, thank you very much for joining me for another episode of Only Fools and Scores. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts, thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to see us visually, you can watch on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, you'd rather watch on some of those platforms. We're everywhere you find podcasts. Make sure you're subscribing if you're on YouTube, and subscribe if you're on the podcast. I don't even know how that works. Just listen. Just you do you. Don't worry about us. And we'll join you again next week, next Tuesday. Podcast goes up every Tuesday, right, Fintan? We'll be good to go.
It does indeed. Thank you very much, Benjamin Spragg. Talk to you next week.
Pleasure. Take care. Bye-bye.